Well, welcome everybody to another great Chalk Talk. We are so excited that you all have joined us for a little bit of a post-draft Chalk Talk tonight. Before we begin, just a quick note to all of our season ticket members. We are hopeful that we're going to have some more information about this season soon that we can share with you. As soon as we do, we'll have that information in your hands. And as always, thank you all for your patience and your understanding during this time. We really appreciate it. Tonight's season ticket member hero of the week is Eugenia G. Eugenia is a nurse at UCSF, a dedicated professional with over 10 years experience caring for patients battling COVID-19. She treats her patients with compassion and empathy during this incredibly difficult fight against this virus. As Eugenia's brother Edgar told us, she may believe she's just doing her job, but she deserves every recognition for the amazing work she does. Thank you to Eugenia and all of the medical professionals in our Giants family. We thank you for continuing to keep us all safe and doing everything you can for those who are ill. Thank you all again for joining us tonight. And as always, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Dave Fleming.
Thank you, Amanda. We really appreciate it. And it's great to be back with you guys on our normal night, Wednesday night. I think it's Wednesday. I'm not in my normal setup, so it's a little different for me tonight. If my internet connection isn't perfect, I apologize ahead of time.
Well, tell everybody what you're doing.
Well, I'm in a cabin in Wyoming in the middle of the Tetons. Yeah, we're taking a little family trip. So even though that's probably not yet exactly totally 100% allowed, I figured we're being careful, we're being safe. We've done a good job through the shelter in place. So we took kids on a little national park tour. So that's what we're doing.
It's got to be fun.
We were in Yellowstone National Park today. We saw 2 bears, a wolf, 1,000 bison. We saw elk. We saw antelope. We saw waterfalls. It was great. It was terrific. It's been a great trip.
So where's your overall destination? Where are you going to wind up?
So in the end, we will finish in Virginia, and the kids will get a chance to spend some time with my mom and dad, which they always do in the summertime. And so they were really, really upset that they weren't going to get to do that this year. We weren't quite sure about flying yet. So we decided, well, we'll drive, we'll see some national parks, we'll end up there, stay for a couple of weeks, baseball will get going, we'll drive back, and I'll be back in time for the games to start.
Yep. Is this like Chevy Chase's station wagon? What are we doing here?
When we drove out of, so we live very close to the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco, and when we pulled out of the driveway, got on Park Presidio, pulled out over the Golden Gate Bridge and queued up the song. I know you can play it in your head, the theme song from National Lampoon's Vacation, Holiday Road. And you know what? We've had a few of those moments in the last few days.
Hey, well, since you've been driving, has Christy Brinkley come by you at all in her car?
I haven't seen her yet. No, haven't seen her or anybody who looks like her.
And when do you stop by to see
Cousin
Eddie?
The worm farm. That's next. We'll see the worm farm after the Tetons.
Well, now, you left town, and then all the acrimony, all the bad feeling. You left town with your family, and then the commissioner and the Tony Clark of the Players Association, they met, and there seemed to be some positive news come out of it, although there's not been an agreement yet to get the game started. At least it sounds like it could happen now. So that's kind of I think we're all
excited. You got what? I was out of the loop today. I was touring around. So get me up to speed. What is the reason to be optimistic?
Well, Major League Baseball, according to the commissioner's announcement, made an offer. He said that there was a framework for an agreement, like 60 games and expanded postseason, 16 teams involved in the postseason this year, and maybe that many next year as well. And also the players will be paid their prorated salaries. Since then, there's a story that's been put out there that the Players Association, with their membership, is wanting more games. Although I did the math on this, Dave, and because I was so good at third grade math, that's about the peak of my math career. But they were talking about July 19th or July 20th getting the season started, and the end would be September 27th. That was the scheduled end. Well, that's around 70 days, so 60 games. I think it leaves room for more games than that. I don't know that we need 10 days off in less than half a season. So I think that a lot of people were speculating, and it's all just speculation, but that may leave room for at least a 65, 66 game schedule, if not more. So we'll see. Until there's a deal, as we've seen, it's all not only speculation, but until there's a deal, who knows what might happen in the interim. But so far, it seems a positive development.
So let's just assume that a deal is done. And then there's other negotiations, right? Roster, obviously health concerns. They're going to cut a deal as far as postseason. And the intriguing thing about this is whether it's 60 or 65 games and the additional playoff teams, this really means that the strategy for the Giants changes. It does. You have a chance to be one of those teams to go to postseason. And I think that's wonderful, because that's not something that we thought the Giants had any chance of doing before the season started. But if this all works out and the numbers are what John's talking about, then it's going to make it really interesting. And every game is almost going to be like an NFL game. Every game is extremely important, because when you get to the end, there's going to be a lot of teams that are bunched up to see who's going to go to postseason.
There was an interesting article today. Jason Stark was talking about last year. He talked about after 60 games, what teams would have qualified for the playoffs. And the interesting thing about it was the Washington Nationals were not a qualifier. So the point being that it is the Oklahoma land rush, and teams that get off to a hot start, even teams that aren't projected to even be close to being a playoff team this year, they got a chance. So it's an all-star, anything goes. And I think if there's anything that comes out of this shortened season that's going to be good, is that there's going to be a lot of cities that are going to be excited about it. Cities that didn't think they were going to have a chance to be excited this year.
Yep.
So I think that's good.
Yeah, I do too.
Well, I mean, doesn't it seem like, because look, we could all get depressed by the way the negotiations have gone, and there's been a lot of acrimony, and there's talk that even when a deal gets done next year, they're going to be arguing again over, look, it's important issues. But all that, to me, would get put aside the first day of the first game, exactly for the reason that you're talking about, is that a 60-game season, I mean, it wouldn't be a representative baseball season, but good Lord, it would be really exciting. Every game would be really, really exciting. So,
and important.
It makes me feel good.
Yeah,
really important. Yeah.
And at the end of the year, they're going to be giving out a ring. And guess what? It's going to mean the same thing that every other ring that has ever been given out has meant.
I agree. Totally agree.
Yeah, no kidding.
I'm into the ring thing because the Giants had this tradition. I guess a lot of teams have it, but the Giants, we found out firsthand, the broadcasters get included in the rings
Yes.
being handed out. So that I'm glad you brought that up, Krug. Yeah.
Let's get another one. Well, hopefully that is good news. I'm glad to hear all that. I mean, I saw a little headline about a positive development today. But I'm really glad to hear that.
Dave, I
did
actually,
you have- yeah, go ahead.
I'm kind of worried about you where you're at, where you're not getting any
And
of
why
this
is that?
information. Well, you're not getting any of this information.
I'm in the middle of nowhere. I can't get a phone call or a text message, or I had to beg and plead to get this internet connection. So I didn't want to miss this tonight with you guys.
So
I almost got that out with a straight face.
So when Mike and I say we've been trying to call you and you haven't picked up, this is your excuse?
And it's a legitimate excuse this time.
Okay, good. All right.
I don't know, Dave. We've heard some pretty lame excuses. What are you, in a covered wagon out there? Come on, don't you have MLB channel on the radio? Let's go.
Well, let me tell you, I've been where I get internet and I get all the information, and I've been for days trying to get away from that because every time I read it, it's mad. So.
Hey, look, we got a broadcast partner that's wrestling buffaloes, and I'm really envious of it, to be honest with you. So, Dave, good
I'll
for you.
send you a picture. Now that I have internet, I'll send you a couple pictures from today after we're done. Just so you can see what we've been up to.
Oh,
It
I think
snowed.
it's great.
It snowed today in Yellowstone. Literally, it snowed on us.
This, and I know you've boycotted Twitter, but this is when you should be on Twitter, so we can see what you're
Sharing
doing.
this with the world. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, a text message will have to be good enough.
Yeah,
Should
or
we,
Instagram.
Instagram. Jess has Instagram, so you can follow her Instagram.
What's Jess's handle?
I don't know.
Come on.
It's Phlegm Fam, at Phlegm Fam.
That's that's it.
Okay, good. Thanks, John.
But
Appreciate it.
Dave does not
She'll
get
post.
included.
I'm never included, huh?
No, that's not. And your birthday, and I think a wedding anniversary and things like that.
We need a post-game wrap Instagram.
We probably
We do.
do need one.
We do. Absolutely.
Pics of the
Don't
game and
openly
whatnot.
hammer any ideas.
As John would say, all that extra money we're making on the wrap, unbelievable.
No, that wasn't me. That was Scully who pointed that out.
That's right.
You must make a fortune doing this show. Yeah. I think Bob Uecker said the same thing, didn't he?
I think.
And he listened to us for a while, and we went to the commercial, and Uecker says, I can't believe how much money you must be making doing this every night. Unbelievable. What a run you got.
Little
two of our
does-
favorites. Little
We didn't
does-
have the heart to tell him.
We did not have the heart.
Okay.
Dave,
Good
who's
show
our guest tonight?
Should we let's set the stage for our actual show. It's our Coors Light Chuck Talk. We have two guests, and I think we can bring them on any moment now. Basically, I mean, Amanda referenced it. We previewed the draft, not really the three of us, but we had Scott Harris on last week and Hunter Bishop to talk about the upcoming draft. The draft has now taken place, and Giants president Farhan Zaidi and Michael Holmes, who's the director of amateur scouting, who controlled the Giants draft, sort of ran the draft for the second year now with the Giants. And I see the two gentlemen pop up on our screens. Welcome to the show, Farhan and Michael.
Thanks, guys.
Michael's still rubbing his temples. The draft wasn't easy this year, was it?
No, I think I'm still trying to catch up on sleep, to be honest with you. But yeah, it was quite the challenge this year. So I might have aged a few years after the last few months.
But in the end, happy with how everything went. The technology worked. The preparation was what you needed it to be. Did it go well overall?
Yeah, I think we were really excited about how things played out. I got to give our staff a tremendous amount of credit the way they handled the whole situation. Obviously, it was a different environment for us. When we're used to crisscrossing across the country, we were at home, sheltering in place, and really diving into conversation about players via telephone calls, via Zoom calls, via watching video. It actually kind of took us back to a lot of us, our roots of scouting. It forced us to jump back into deliveries and arm actions and swings. just everything. We had to kind of take it all in, spend a lot of time in conversation. A lot of positive conversation came out of it, a lot of quality discussion. So a lot of disagreement, which I always kind of say that if you don't have disagreement in a draft room, it's not a good draft room. So I think what it allowed us to do is it allowed us to really kind of cultivate conversation, dive into these players even more than we maybe could when we're crisscrossing the country. And I think what you'll see is a really positive outcome.
Well, we're a little worried about you guys. Last year you got a little bat heavy, the first top 10 guys, and the first 2 picks this year. Again, you went for bats. But in the end, after the first 7 picks, you managed to bring 4 arms into the organization. And so was that your plan all along, to get to draft more pitchers, or just was it the philosophy that just take the best athlete available? What was your thinking?
I would say, definitely at the top of the draft, we were in the market for best available player. And that's kind of always the approach that I like to take, is just best available player, regardless of need. Obviously in baseball, it's so different from the NBA or the NFL, where these players jump right into the big league team. So there's a path for them that starts in the minor leagues. So we try not to be short-sighted when it comes to drafting for need, and we wanted to take the best available player. I would say as we move deeper down the draft, and with it only being 5 rounds, you don't get too deep. We did recognize that we needed to do some addition on the pitching side of things. And we were just really happy because a lot of the pitchers that we had identified that we wanted to be in play on were still available. So wanting to address the pitching aspect in the draft and having guys there that we liked was definitely a win for us.
Are you close to having signed all the top 7?
Yeah, I'll just say that the conversations are very positive, and I don't anticipate anything going wrong.
How many of them have you signed out of the 7 so far?
We're still a long way from there as far as doing some physicals and different things. So none of them have actually signed yet, but we definitely feel really confident about where we're at with all of them.
Farhan, do you want to give us your, so we heard from Michael. Now, what about from you? Did the draft go well from your perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say, first of all, great to see you guys. It's been a little while. We got to listen in on you earlier, and it was nice hearing you guys get ready to get your ring size sheets out.
Yes.
Thanks for setting those expectations. But I will say we were on a call with some of our staff a few days ago, as it became clear that we were going to be probably, playing a significantly shortened season because of the environment. And, somebody kind of made the point, hey, we were 19-6 in July. We were the best team in baseball last year in July, and that's like half the season now. So all it takes is a hot stretch. It sounds like we may have expanded playoffs too. So we're really excited about, the news that, seems like the sides are getting closer to a deal. And even though it's been a long, spring and summer for the whole country, and not to take away from the very serious things that are going on, but I still felt a jolt of real excitement when I heard that progress was being made. And I think people who work in baseball and fans everywhere have that same feeling. As for the draft, I just echo what Holmesy, and I've known Michael Holmes for a long time. So that's, I dropped the Holmesy on him. So I apologize if I get a little bit too familiar, but
that's the first time I've ever heard him say Michael, by the way. Just
it really is a situation where you line up the board, you take the best available talent. And we did go a little bat heavy last year, as Kruk mentioned. This year, the way things played out, we took a couple of bats early and then things balanced out for us late. But it's going to be an interesting, it's an interesting situation for us, with the potential minor leagues contraction next year. We may have one fewer minor league team. We've got a lot of young prospects, coming through the lower levels of the system. So it was important for us to focus on premium positions and pitching, because those are places you always have reps and at bats for guys. So, we didn't kind of jump off of our board to accommodate that, but it's great that it worked out that way.
Type, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, you know what? And Farhan, I had a conversation with you at Dodger Stadium, and I think it was close to opening day. And one of the things that really hacked me off is the number of players over the years that have come up against the Giants, that have come from the Bay Area, really ticked me off. And I told you that, and I said, is there any way that we can make sure that some of these Bay Area guys stay in a Giants uniform?
Yeah.
And you said yes. And you said, you know what, we take this very seriously. And I'm wondering, I know you drafted the kid out of De La Salle, and I'm wondering if you're going to give me any credit for that.
I guess the obvious answer is yes, or the necessary
thanks.
answer is
I
yes.
appreciate that.
But no, I think, we talked about that a lot over the last couple of years, and we were excited to get Hunter Bishop last year. I know he was on last week. And it's exciting to have local guys that, I think every amateur baseball player is excited to join the Giants organization, but to have guys that grew up here and grew up, coming out to the ballpark here and rooting on the Giants, it's particularly special. So we're excited we were able to do that. And we better make sure that we give you the credit for those picks from now on.
No, you don't have to do that, but I'm glad you signed him, by the way.
Well, I have a question for, I got a question for Farhan Zaidi. I want to talk about Patrick Bailey is I saw this guy, and obviously he drafted as a catcher, and you take a catcher in the first round, he's going to catch. But he looks to me like he's athletic enough to play anywhere, not only on the corner positions in the infield, but corner positions in the outfield as well. Was this in the back of your mind when you were impressed with his athleticism enough to draft him first round?
Yeah, I think the way rosters are going nowadays, with people really trying to maximize the production out of every spot, I think you're going to see teams moving away from the traditional starting catcher and backup catcher configuration, and you're just going to have two catchers, and the best teams are going to have two catchers where the manager is really going to struggle with taking one of those bats out of the lineup every night. And to the extent that those guys can play other positions and it gives the manager the option to keep those guys in there, I think they're going to do that. So, we've talked about this a lot with, Buster at the big league level and Joey Bart being really close. And, I think it's a good idea for every position player that we bring into the system, whether a catcher or somebody who plays another position, to learn at least one other position. I think it's just good for their baseball education, and it works out well for their career, because position players can get blocked. You can get up to AAA, and if there's a guy at the big league level who has your position locked down, you can get really backed up at those upper levels. But if you give yourself the opportunity to get to the big league roster at multiple different spots, it can only work out for you and the organization. So I think all these guys, all three position players that we drafted, are going to wind up playing multiple positions as they work their way up.
John,
we have so many questions about the draft and about the Giants' young players and all that, and I think we have time to ask them all. But I do want to just digress for a moment, because you did touch on the discussions between the commissioner and the Players Association and what's being talked about today, that were being reported today, and where are we? What do you know, and what don't you know at this point? What have you heard about what's happening, and the likelihood that something's going to be agreed upon here in the soon?
Yeah, I know about what you guys know and what everybody on this call knows, which is what's being reported, and I take that as a sign for optimism, because I think when things get closer to the finish line, people kind of close ranks and really just try to get a deal across the line. So, what I've heard is, in the last 24, 48 hours, there's a lot to be encouraged about. Obviously, a face-to-face meeting, which produced a lot of progress. And I think you guys alluded to it. There's still a lot of things to work out beyond just the economic framework for a deal, having to do with rosters, transactions, the safety protocol. But those conversations have been going on in parallel. So I think there's definitely reason for optimism, and we're not across the finish line, but certainly hopeful, And I think we have, as much optimism now as we've had, over the last several weeks that we'll get something figured out.
Farhan, a question about if this all goes down and everything is agreed to, how long would it take you to get the troops assembled?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, the rough time frame that I've heard is, maybe something along the lines of, 10 days to 2 weeks, before camp starts, and, probably about a 3-week camp. But, as has been reported, we're dealing with a little bit of a back end. So I think the sooner, if we get across the finish line for a deal, the sooner we can get everybody into camp and we can get games started, the more games we can play. And so that's the rough time frame that I've heard, but I'm sure that's part of what's being discussed between both sides right now.
John, do you have any follow-ups before we get back to a couple draft
Well,
questions?
I know that initially they talked about part of the framework of this thing were 30-man rosters for this year only, and the 20-man taxi squad, since there are no minor league seasons going on, no minor league teams are playing. Is that still the framework, or are you saying that might change as well?
No, I think we're going to have expanded rosters, certainly to start the season. Now, in a 60-game season, there's really not much of a start, middle, and end. So maybe they would just go with an expanded roster the whole year. Maybe it would start at a bigger number, go down in the middle period, and then expand back up at the end. But I would expect that, especially since it's going to be a sprint for the pitchers to get stretched out, although a lot of those guys have been staying in shape and throwing, that we'll have multiple extra roster spots to start the season. And I think those things are yet to be determined, but that's an area where clearly everybody's on the same page. The players, it's good for them if we have expanded rosters, more guys get service time, and it helps keep the players safer if they're not carrying too much of a workload out of the gate. And from the side of the teams, we also obviously want to keep the players safe and avoid injury risks. So I think that's something that we'll find common ground on.
Yeah, Farhan, when you talk about this expanded roster, I mean, we understand that it would be great for Joey Bart. It would be great for all these young guys that need to participate to be part of this roster. But I'm wondering, I'll just use Sean Jelly as an example. As far as hitters being part of this extra roster and pitchers, what's the thought process of doing that?
Yeah, I think we're going to have a balance of both. I guess what I would say is with pitchers, if you limit their reps, maybe you're saving some bullets, and that might be a good thing, and avoiding injury right in a situation where the games don't quote unquote matter. But for a guy like Jelly or some of our younger pitchers, there's still development work to be done, and so for them to get some level of reps, some level of competitive reps is important. I think on the position player side, if you had a guy who was going to A-ball this year, your hope would be that you're able to get him reps where you can send him to Double-A next year, and the guy's not just back at the same level. So that's something that we'll have to work through on the position player side. I think we're going to wind up having a balance of both. And I know we've talked about this some already, but it's going to be an interesting balance for us, making sure we get competitive reps for some of our top prospects, but also make sure that we have depth, major league depth in place for, if we do have injuries and need to rely on some of the players that are part of that expanded camp. So it's going to be a fun baseball exercise for us to do. And, a lot of the players that start the season in that expanded camp, in a shortened sprint of a season could wind up playing big roles down the stretch.
Yeah.
Dave, I was going to ask a question. I'm bouncing around. I was going to ask Michael a question about the draft. We're kind of bouncing around, and Farhan brought up the idea about some of the top prospects getting reps and perhaps in an expanded roster situation. Michael, what are you telling your kids that are signing now this year? Are they just going to be put in the closet for a year? Will you have will they gather and get to put on the uniform for the first time and come to a 2-week clinic, or how are you going to do this with the new kids coming into the organization?
Yeah, it's a good question, Mike. I think right now we're still a little uncertain with that, just because, right now the minor leagues are not playing, so we have nowhere to really send them. So we can't really hold a camp right now, per the MLB commissioner's office. Ideally, we'd like to put together something this offseason, some type of instructional league. It might be the first time that we actually get the guys together to do some things with. But one thing that our staff's been really good at is starting to put together plans for these guys that we can get in their hands, whether it be in the weight room and the strength conditioning standpoint, whether it would be swinging in a cage or some type of program for our pitchers, whether it be throwing development. Player development has been working hand in hand with our scouting staff. We're already putting together plans for these guys. So once they get signed, we can get them into their hands some type of program where they can continue their work and their development. And then the first chance that we get from the commissioner's office to have some sort of camp, we'll certainly get these guys together and start getting with them one-on-one on the field.
It's a good question. And by the way, no problem bouncing around. If anybody asks anything, I think we can ping pong back and forth. That's totally fine. Michael, I thought maybe we should ask about a couple of the other players that you drafted aside from just Patrick Bailey, the first round pick, and Kyle Harrison, the local kid. I heard your words after you picked Casey Schmidt was the second player you selected. I think you said plus arm, double plus arm. I don't like making player comparisons because I think it's kind of unfair to the young guys, but I did think of Matt Chapman, like double plus arm. There are not that many players at that position who have just super arm strength like he does. He's a guy you were responsible for drafting when you were with the A's. Tell us a little bit about Casey Schmidt and what he brings to the table.
Yeah, Dave, and you're not the only one that's asked me that question in the last week, I'll tell you that. And I would never put that type of comparison or expectations on Casey. I'll just tell you this, we're really excited about him. He's an athletic corner player. We think he's a plus defender at third base. We think he really can impact the game with his glove at third base, similar to a lot of the above average defenders at the major league level right now. And he does have a 60-70 double plus arm type, tremendous arm strength. He moonlighted at San Diego State as their closer and was up to 94, 95 miles per hour. So we love the athleticism. We love the defense. We love the arm strength. We think it's a weapon over there. But most importantly, we love this guy's bat. He's got tremendous contact skills. He's got strength. He's got the ability to drive the ball gap to gap. And we think the power is only coming and is really just scratching the surface as far as his ability to drive the ball and hit the ball over the fence. So as far as the type of player he is, it's a really well-rounded player with athleticism who can impact the game on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, sounds exciting. And the pitching part, I think it seemed like he's a position player for you, at least at first. Is the pitching part on the shelf? Is he have the potential to be a two? You Farhan, whoever wants to answer that one. Is he a third baseman, period?
I would say we drafted him because we like his offense and his bat and his ability to play third base. I would tell you he's the kind of kid that's probably going to find his way to sneak into the bullpen and convince a pitching coach to throw a side one day. And then once they see that, they're going to try to steal him and put him on their side, and make him a pitcher only. So I will probably have to keep him away from some of those guys initially. But I just think the ability to do both speaks to him being so well-rounded as a player. But ideally, his offensive ability is what attracted us to him.
Awesome.
Well, Kruk, yeah, go ahead, Dwayne.
Well, I'm going to really go off the rails on this. Farhan's a new dad, which, by the way, I'm sure you're having a blast with it.
I was just going to say, I've been on a couple of different Zoom calls, and I've slowly found that as time has gone on, the only part of our house that doesn't have baby debris everywhere is the ceiling, which is why I've got my Zoom camera pointed straight up there.
Perfect.
That's why I got the plain background here. It's the only clean part of the house.
My broadcast partner and friend for the last 40 years, obviously he's here, is Mike Krupko. And he says that you're really only a true dad when you can change a diaper one-handed. And I'm wondering if you can do that.
I don't think I can. I'm going to be totally honest. I thought the statement was going to end at change a diaper, and I was really excited because I'm very proficient at that. But I'm not sure I've gone one-handed with it.
He's told me that he can. I never witnessed it, but unless he's Pinocchio, I really believe that he can. Mike?
Oh, no question. But I'll tell you, you're kind of forced into that education. It comes when you've got a 3-year-old strapped around one leg. You got an 18-month-old that's strapped around the other leg. You're holding a brand newborn with a mud diaper, and you've got one hand and you got one wipe, and you learn to make it work.
And you're cooking a steak at the grill. It's perfect.
And mixing a martini. And by the way, Michael, when you were talking about getting no sleep during the draft, Farhan was giving you no sympathy about the no sleep thing.
No, I know. I brought that up a few weeks ago, and I got a silent treatment, so I knew not to bring it up again.
Oh, anyway. Sorry, Farhan. I just had to get that off my chest. It was awesome.
Something to work on. One-handed diaper change.
One-handed diaper change.
Yeah.
Let's
Go ahead, Dave.
let's make the diaper champ happy and talk about the other pitchers that you drafted, because you did draft some other pitchers, right?
Yeah, we did. Dave, we took a kid by the name of Nick Sweeney. He's from NC State, actually teammates with Patrick Bailey. He's a left-handed pitcher who's got the ability to miss bats, and that's what intrigued us the most about him. Up to 93, we've seen a plus curveball and a plus changeup. He's got a history for swing and miss, and we really like his approach on the mound. He's really aggressive. He's not afraid of contact. He challenges hitters. And we see him as a guy that we can really develop as a starting pitcher who's got tremendous upside. And a guy that misses bats like that at the collegiate level is definitely an intriguing type thing. And if you work down further, Kipe, you bring up Kyle Harrison, and, Farhan answered your question a little bit, but I'll answer too. It's real important. It's real important for me that we're really good at the local area, in the Bay Area, when it comes to the draft. And I think that's a real important approach. We need to have a strong presence there. We need to be in play on those guys. And that was one of the reasons we were really excited about Kyle coming from De La Salle High School. And also the fact that we think he's really good, and we think he's got a tremendous upside future. You're talking about a really polished high school pitcher from the left side who runs his fastball up to 94. He's got a sweeping breaking ball and a feel for a changeup. But something you just don't see in today's game, where we're always talking about velocity and velocity and velocity. This guy's got the ability to really command all pitches to both sides of the plate. He knows how to pitch east and west. He knows how to pitch north and south, has the ability to soften the baseball. And to be able to do that from the left side, he's a guy that our entire staff was really excited about, and even more excited the fact that he's a local kid being from De La Salle.
So now you're in the 50-day period following the draft, and you're free to negotiate with anybody. Do you find it being an advantage that you are with an organization in the Bay Area, that you could go to the local kids in the Bay Area that you know are prospects? Are you having success with that as you go into the Oklahoma land rush and start to negotiate with really anybody?
Yeah, Krug, I don't know if any of us knew what we were actually getting into, because it's just never happened before, right? It's the first time. So I'd be lying if I told you that we knew what we were getting into, but I can promise you we got into it and we were fully prepared. We had really had a good process of how we were going to approach the whole passed over market. It's still evolving as we speak. We've been on the phones constantly with kids. We've obviously had our so-called recruiting pitch that we had prepared going into this. The Bay Area, Northern California, West Coast kids, that's definitely an area that we want to be really good at and be very successful when we approach the passed over market and talk to players from those areas. But it's still evolving. I think when you look at it initially, you think that it's going to be a way to just add. I think some people may have taken for granted that there are a lot of good players out there that want to go back to college and maybe, get their junior year over or their senior year over because the NCAA ruled that they could go back for another year. based off of the the shutdown early due to COVID. So, it all comes down to relationships. Our scouting staff feel like that we do a really good job establishing relationships, not only with the players, the families, but also the coaches. And we've really spent a lot of time just in conversation with these guys and trying to see if we're a fit for them. We obviously feel like we got a really strong product with the Giants, not only the Bay Area, the ownership group, the fans, but most importantly, the history of winning. And obviously the kids that have done their homework, they know that we have that to offer.
Let me ask a follow-up about those the so-called undrafted free agents who are the number is the same for every team, so it really is a recruiting pitch. Farhan, have you been shocked? I haven't followed it super closely, but some high school kids are either, it sounds to me like at least a few high school kids are agreeing to sign. I just figured high school kids would not be a part of this at all, that they would universally want to go to college and wait for a more normal draft. Are you surprised by that? Has that changed your philosophy? Is that true? Is that happening?
Yeah, I guess first of all, I'm surprised that you're in Wyoming with no internet connection, but somehow you have the undrafted free agent tracker going. So.
Okay, fair.
But yeah, there are a handful of high school kids, more than a handful, that sound like they verbally committed, and I know we're having some of those conversations. There's some kids that just want to play pro ball, and I think it goes to show that for a lot of these kids, it's about the love of the game, and it's not about the money. And if somebody's going to give you a six-figure bonus, great. But if you're looking at $20,000 and it's a chance to fulfill your dream, then there's some kids that just opt to go that way. And I think the good thing about the system is guys have the choice, and Major League Baseball put in a quiet period between the end of the draft and really Sunday was the first time we were able to contact any of the undrafted players. And I think that was really important because it gave these kids that, a lot of kids that would have been drafted in a normal year, sure, it was disappointing not to hear their names called, and gave them some time to think about whether they wanted to take their names out of the process entirely, or at least hear teams' pitches. And we've talked to some players that, set up calls and meetings with us, and they've, kind of respectfully told us they're going back to school. And, we take no issue with that. I mean, it's obviously their right. And we actually appreciate that they've taken the time to hear our pitch and consider our organization. So it's been interesting. It's a little bit surprising when you compare it to the bonuses these guys usually get. But when you think about how committed these guys are to the game, I guess it's not all that surprising.
Now we're hearing stories that there are some teams who sort of look for loopholes in this thing where you're only permitted to give a $20,000 signing bonus or whatever, and I guess you could also offer them a college money, like a scholarship so they can go to college or finish college or whatever. But that there are some teams who've sort of found ways around that, and I don't know if they're offering them contracts for next year on the 40-man roster or big league, however they're doing it. Have you heard that same thing?
Yeah, I mean, you always hear rumors of things. There's rumors and there's reality, and MLB has been very clear that people should not be coloring outside the lines of the coloring book on this one. So I would anticipate that, a lot of those are rumors. I think if anybody does do anything that's kind of outside the bounds of the rules, that MLB will be on it and investigate. And in our experience, a lot of these kids are making decisions based on geographic preference. There's been cases where guys have friends who are in organizations, and that's driven their decision. And in other cases, they've just heard that an organization is really good at developing their young minor leaguers. They treat their young minor leaguers well. And I think every organization, including ours, aspires to be that, and hopefully we can sell some players on that. But yeah, there's been some wild stories. I know Holmes certainly heard a few of them. But, in our experience, guys are just trying to make the right decision for themselves, choose the right organization if they decide to sign.
Hey,
Okay.
Farhan, I want to get back to let's hope that this thing gets resolved and there's 60 or 65 games. Doesn't that change the landscape of what I say we as an organization, look at as far as this 2020 season? I mean, this team has got a chance to make the postseason. And doesn't that change the landscape of everything?
Yeah, I think it does. Now, we had a really good spring training in March. We were feeling really good about how the team was shaping up. And, even though it winds up being a cliche for teams that maybe don't go into the season as consensus contenders, but, we felt like we had a chance to surprise some people. And, one of the things that we were most excited about was the way that Drew Smiley and Kevin Gosman were throwing the ball in the spring, because you add those guys to Cueto and Samardzija. We had the unfortunate injury to Tyler Beatty, but Logan Webb was throwing the ball really well. And suddenly you felt like you had a really solid 1 through 5 rotation. Now, we get into a 60-game sprint where we may only have a 3-week camp, and I'm not even sure we're going to have a 5-man rotation. We may have to tandem guys. We may have to do some unconventional things with a pitching staff to get through 9 innings a day early on in the season. And the other thing we're going to have to factor in is it's going to be a sprint. We're not going to have as many off days in the schedule as we usually do. So that may factor into the pitching staff as well. On the position player side, we've talked about expanded rosters, and one of the things that we prioritized in terms of our offseason was getting more right-handed thumb to be able to hit left-handed pitching better. And, that was part of the motivation of going out and signing Hunter Pence and Wilmer Flores pretty late in the offseason. And, we might see more matching up. If you have more roster spots, you can kind of carry more guys that might be in specialized roles and kind of platoon. And, we obviously had, Darren Ruff go off in spring training as well. That's another right-handed bat we can put in there against the tough lefties, in our division and around the league. And that was one thing that we did look at. There's going to be a lot of left-handed starters, left-handed pitching in the NL West. And, we may be playing the NL West a lot from the sounds of it. So there's all kinds of strategy that goes into it. And we're really excited about the way our roster is shaping up. And it's always a lot more fun when you feel like you're ready, when you feel like you have a chance. And I think the schedule, the way the rosters are setting up, and the way our guys played this spring all give us, reason to be excited.
Let me do a couple fan questions, because I'm blaming Wyoming. I've done a terrible job tonight. We have fans that submit questions. I haven't been looking at them. We've had too much to talk about, but I want to get to at least a couple of them. Jane Erickson asks, and Farhan, you can take this one, since we're talking about potential changes and the way the season's setting up. What do you feel about the universal DH? Sounds like that's going to be in place almost assuredly when we get the year going.
Yeah, it's funny. We've talked about this before. I spent my first, the first 10 years of my MLB career in the AL and was a little bit of a DH snob. And since then, I've really seen the light. I love the National League style of play. I love the strategy that goes into it. The fact that, every time you have a rally, it seems to funnel to that pitcher spot. And, managers have decisions to make. And, the pitchers that can swing the bat give you a huge advantage. I think there's just a lot of fun strategy-wise. And, I've learned to really appreciate that style of play. But, there's another side to this, which is it obviously creates more offense. It lengthens the careers for some guys that, maybe get to a point in their careers where they can't really go out and play a position every day, but they can still hit. And that's something that fans want to see. So, it's going to change the strategy a little bit for us, but, it's something that the players, from the sounds of it want. I think it's certainly manageable for us, and might miss that strategy a little bit, but it may also give us the opportunity to get another bat in there that we really like. And, whatever winds up happening, we'll certainly try to use the rule to our advantage.
All right, let me get one more Giants fan question. Matt DeFrag asks, and maybe Michael, you can take this one. But we talked about Patrick Bailey, and Farhan talked about versatility and catching depth. But Matt was asking about, there is some train of thought, I guess, from some people about catching pitchers can't play every day? Are they less valuable? Do they get hurt more? Do you spend a high draft pick on a catcher because there's more risk of? I don't know. I just figured I'd pass Matt's question along and see if you had any thoughts about using that first pick on a catcher with the extra things that come with that position.
Yeah, sure. I tend to look at the draft as an exercise of building assets. And certainly, Patrick is an asset for us, and he happens to be a catcher. And the fact of the matter is, and Farhan kind of touched on it a little bit when he talked about extending people's careers, players' careers. It could be a universal DH. Just the flexibility and the versatility for someone like Patrick and his athleticism to move to different places on the field doesn't seem, in my opinion, to be a problem to have two really good catchers, two really young good catchers in our system. Matter of fact, it gives Gabe a lot of options once those guys are both on the big league roster to kind of be flexible with the lineup, which may allow those guys to extend their career, keep their legs longer, be fresher, and be more productive for a longer amount of time. So I think to answer the question, though, when you approach the draft, I look at it as acquiring assets. I look at it as acquiring talent. We definitely thought he was the best talent on the board, and we're really excited to have him.
I've got a quick story about Patrick Bailey that I think Holmesy's probably too modest to offer up himself. But, Bailey was actually a really good high school player as well, had a chance to go in the first few rounds out of high school. And Holmesy actually went into the family's home and, actually advised the kid to go to school and told him he had a chance to be a first-round pick in 3 years. And here we are, and he's a first-round pick, very deserving first-round pick. So that was a good call, Holmesy, and happy we have him. Happy you advised him that way.
Yeah, good call for Patrick and his family, right?
Yeah,
Now,
very.
This DH, this universal DH thing, at first it was talked about for this year only, but one of the things that was being talked about after the discussions last night between the commissioner and the Players Association was also having the universal DH for next year as well, leading into the discussions for the new basic agreement. And a lot of people are sort of taking a leap of logic and saying, and so probably the DH will be in both leagues forever from here on, and that'll be negotiated as part of that new deal. So our personal feelings notwithstanding, do you anticipate that that's probably the future, that the National League will also have the DH, from here on?
Yeah, I think that's a fair, logical train of thought to have, John. And I can certainly see it going that way. I mean, from a front office standpoint, again, personal feelings aside, what is important and valuable to us is having enough lead time, knowing what might happen in 2021. So we're going to have the DH in 2021. You would rather know now than in December, when you've got to scramble and maybe unwind some of what you've done in terms of roster planning. So, we had a little bit of that issue this past offseason with the 3-batter minimum. It was a rule that was talked about a lot, but actually wasn't enacted until, pretty late in the offseason, even though it had been on the table for a while. So I think from a front office standpoint, the preference is if we're going to make a change like this, you'd rather have enough lead time so, you can make personnel decisions appropriately.
So, and when you went to spring training, it was just going to be the Giants in the National League, 162 games, status quo. But now we're talking about not just a shorter season, but the DH being involved. And there are still some actual free agents out there. Could the Giants be signing some people before this season starts, considering that all of a sudden you need a DH every day?
I mean, that's true. But on the same token, I feel like with some of the performances we were getting in spring training, we were wondering how we were going to get at bats for everybody. And this may create opportunity. You take a guy like, Darren Roth, who, his primary position is first base. And we obviously have Brandon Belt over there. And, maybe this opens up more at bats for him. We've talked about Hunter Pence, who, is going to, fight his way out to the field and into the lineup every day. But realistically, he's a guy whose workload we have to manage, and maybe having that DH spot, allows him to get into the lineup more. Pablo, same thing. So, it might be a way for us to get at bats for, some of the positive stories that emerged in spring training. So I think we're going to stay in-house, and I know Gabe and the staff are excited to have kind of another lineup spot to play with some of the positive performances we had earlier this year.
Good stuff. You guys have anything more before we let Farhan and Michael off the hook here? Mike, Kite?
Michael,
No, I think we're good.
have you actually signed any of these guys who were non-drafted? Have the Giants signed a few of those, or how many have you signed?
We're getting really close on some guys. We're not quite to the finish line yet, but we're getting close.
The one question that I've seen come up a couple of times that I just wanted to address, because I think it's important, and I'm actually glad some of our fans and season ticket holders are asking it, is, what's going on with the scouts and our minor leaguers. And we've retained all our scouts for the full season. That was a decision made by ownership, which, obviously we feel really good about. And I know Holmesy's excited to, potentially get his guys back out to do some summer work as, some of these summer events start going. So we're hoping it's an active summer for our scouts, and that they're able to, put in the work that they want to do. And for our minor leaguers, for those that didn't see, we announced that we were going to be extending the minor league allowances through the end of the scheduled minor league season on September 7th. So happy to be able to report that. And the last thing on the minor leaguers, Kruk, you asked about this earlier. I think one positive about us hopefully getting across the finish line on an agreement at the major league levels, I think we'll turn next to the minor leaguers to, potential instructional league, fall league, type scenarios to get these guys some at bats and to continue their development, because for us as an organization and a lot of organizations around baseball, that's critical. So really looking forward to getting those guys back out onto the field as well.
Good news on all fronts. Yeah.
Hey, by the way, if some of the guys you're negotiating with are kind of on the edge, don't be afraid to throw in a couple of Costco hot dog coupons. That will push them over the edge.
That's good to know. I appreciate that.
Out, so I think we can throw those in.
I think that's okay by MLB, actually.
Yeah. And have good column. He's very inspiring about the Giants. How great it is to be a Giant. So
yeah, it really is.
You'll be willing, right, Kruk? You call him.
Yeah, have them call me if you need a little pep talk.
There you go.
There you
Thanks,
go.
guys.
All right.
Michael,
Thanks for your time,
thanks
fellas.
for being with
Thank
us.
you.
Thanks, guys. Really appreciate it. Stay safe.
Talk to you guys soon. Thank you. You too. Our Coors Light Chalk Talk with Michael Holmes and Farhan Zaidi. Those guys are always really fun to talk to, and sounds like they're excited about the young players they brought into the organization, but also lots of other news and stuff to talk about too. So,
well, it's just great to get their perspective, because they're so open about how they go about their business. I think the fans here listening tonight, they get an idea as just how much enthusiasm this organization has in it's development and how far that we've come here in the last year. So it's an exciting time. It really is. And as they said, it's uncharted. They're able to negotiate with anybody right now. That's never happened before. And these guys look like they're enjoying it and having fun with it, and they're being productive.
Yeah.
And this whole recruiting thing is, the whole recruiting thing is just crazy. Like, we producing videos to help players understand how you play or develop, and having current players call these undrafted players. I mean, there's never been anything like that that's happened. And look, we're all for biased, I think, but if I were a young player trying to pick an organization, the Giants would be high on my list. I mean, for lots of reasons, but the two guys we just talked to are two of them, but there's opportunity. There's a franchise that cares about you, that's going to invest in you. I don't know. The Giants would be very attractive to me.
Well, when you consider the fact that how many people did they invite to spring training? Like 150? Well, maybe not that many, but
A lot.
If you show any signs at all, not only do you get a chance to jump one level to another, you get a chance to be in the big leagues. I mean, all you got to do is look at the starting lineup last year and then look at the starting lineup at the end of the year, and you can see that you got a chance to be in the big leagues. And when you get there, you better do something fast, because you may not be there for very long, but you got a chance to get there. So make a good first impression, and this is the right organization to be in. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I
And
did
can I
see-
say one other thing? Go ahead,
Oh,
John.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
No,
go
go ahead, Dave. That's right.
Well, I was
did-
just going to,
oh,
yeah.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, oh, yeah. Well, I thought John asking Farhan at the end there, a couple follow-ups about this DH thing. I mean, the other thing that I was thinking about during our conversation was, look, I'm not saying it's the wrong thing to do. There are lots of reasons to do it, but for Giants fans, if we never watch the pitcher hit again, if the rules are now, if we're never going to have a National League style game played again with no warning, that's going to be jarring to a lot of people. It's jarring to me if that's it. And I think it's true. It's a possibility that that's it.
Hey, when you talk about the DH, Farhan brought up Hunter Pence, and Hunter had a great deal of success DHing in the American League for Texas last year. He made the All-Star team, and usually he was a DH over there. But also, you have Alex Dickerson, and the big problem that he's had, because he's got a great bat, and we saw it many times last year, but he has a hard time staying healthy. And when you go back not so long ago in baseball history, Edgar Martinez and Paul Molitor come to mind, guys you played against, Kite, yourself in the American League. These guys had a hard time staying healthy. They had a hard time staying in the lineup. And finally, they just said, well, let's DH him. Maybe we'll get more at bats that way. And both of them ended up ultimately in the Hall of Fame, where they were mostly DHs. So that could be something that could help a guy like Dickerson stay healthy and get more at bats, because from what we saw when he was healthy last year, this guy could really be something. So the DH might be the best thing that ever happened to him. So, and like conversely to the Giants in that regard, getting some more power in the lineup on a regular basis from those two guys who could be DH. The main reason I asked him about it was because we've heard these rumors for weeks that Yasiel Puig, the guy that Giants fans sort of love to hate, is unsigned, and there was some speculation and a rumor that maybe the Giants would be interested in him, and not as a DH, but to play the field, because you already had guys like Dickerson and Pence or Darren Ruff already here who could be DHs. But from what he said, it doesn't sound like something like that is going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, look, for every Madison Bumgarner at bat, there's 25 Atlee Hammaker at bats. Sorry, Atlee, but that's a fact. So I'm not going to say that I'm totally in on this DH thing, but it does make the Giants roster a lot more interesting to talk about. It really does. And maybe after this year and next year, if that's the way they go, maybe they go back to letting the pitchers hit. Who knows? But anyway, hopefully, we'll get to see some baseball. I'm informed here that Mario Alioto has done this.
We do. We have a little surprise for you, Kite. It's
And
a
what
couple
is that
days
in?
early, I think.
So is this about the DH?
Hey,
No.
yeah.
I didn't tell him to put the candles on there, but we thought your birthday's coming up.
So the candles I see are 07.
Well, Kite, I don't think that's right.
No?
No.
Can you see it? Is it better that way?
Yeah, for 70. of which you will turn 70 this Friday. And we all want to say happy birthday to the DOG, the designated old guy on our crew.
So the National League has inherited the DOG. Is that it? All right. I get to be the oldest guy in the crew, and I appreciate that.
And me and Krug, we can't wait to find out what it's like for years down the road when we hit that.
Well, let me tell you what it's like, John. You pee 3 times a night. That's what it's like, okay? And then you stub your toe twice while you're doing it, and then you can't get back to sleep. Anyway, thanks, Mario.
Happy birthday.
Yeah.
70 it is.
Happy birthday.
I never
Have
thought
a
I'd
slice
hit
and
70.
tell us how it is.
I hit 1.
Why? Oh, look at that.
Very nice.
Happy birthday, Kai.
Put it up. We put it
Happy
up on the
birthday to you. Happy birthday to you.
To you.
Happy birthday,
Birthday.
dear Smoothie. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday to you.
Hey,
70.
while we're all here and we're wishing happy birthday to our dear friend, and there's another guy that we need to tip our cap and raise our glasses to that we lost. Mike McCormick passed away. And until Tim Lincecum, he was the only San Francisco Giant to ever win, or only Giant to ever win the Cy Young Award. And for me, having grown up in the area where he's from Alhambra. I used to live in Alhambra, and Mike McCormick was a legend when I grew up. Every ballpark we went to, we always were told, see that place over there? That's where Mike McCormick hit the ball. And every ballpark that we played in, it had the legend of Mike McCormick there. And all of us got to meet him. All of us got to know him. He was a gentleman. He was a great Giant. And I just want to say to Mike McCormick, from all of us, thank you for being you, and a tip to you and a toast to you, my friend.
A guy who will be greatly missed.
Yeah.
Because he was a great man and loved every part of being a Giant. He did.
And he went back all the way as an 18-year-old, a bonus baby. He was there in uniform out in the bullpen the day the Giants played their last game at the Polo Grounds as the New York Giants, and came out with them to San Francisco, and then ended up eventually in the 60s going to some other teams, and the Giants got him back. I think he'd been a couple of years with the Washington Senators in the American League, and they got him back. Talk about a great trade. He came back and won the Cy Young Award, 22 wins that year. And so Mike McCormick and Krug, I remember I think maybe the first year or two that I did Giants games, 97, 98, somewhere in there, you had a weekend off, you went on assignment, and he did the games that weekend, filling in for you. And that's where I really had a chance to spend some time with him. Just a great gentleman, great guy, and so many stories. And one of the things you always had to appreciate about him, people would bring up, and I brought it up in that telecast, the only San Francisco Giant at that time ever to win the Cy Young Award. And he said, well, thank you. The greatest Giants pitcher I ever saw was Juan Marichal. So, and Juan never won the Cy Young. He finished second in the voting about 8 times or whatever in the 60s, but never won it. But he never, when you pointed out that he won it, he never neglected to mention Juan Marichal. So he was gracious, and we really are going to miss him.
He, as you pointed out, I mean, his career started at the Polo Grounds, and then he played at Candlestick. He played at Seal Stadium, then Candlestick. And when the Giants opened up Pac Bell Park in 2000, he came to the ballpark. He wanted to see it. And he came there, and we saw him that day, and he teared up seeing the ballpark. And he was convincing us that he should go to Dusty Baker and tell him he wants to throw 1 inning at Pac Bell Park so he could say that he pitched at all the ballparks. And he was convincing. I mean, we thought he was going to do it. And you know what? I believe he still could have got people out.
Yeah. Very nice. Hey, Dave, you mentioned the passing of Mike McCormick. I want to mention a birthday one of our folks in our ownership group. And look, we've heard all about the owners and the players, and we really adore our ownership group. But Bob Sokoloff just had a recent birthday, and I think it was a big one. And he's part of our ownership group. He and his wife Audrey. So I just want to acknowledge Bob and Audrey. And what was it, his 90th? Is that possible?
90th birthday.
So I just want to recognize Bob and all of our owners who, as we read all of the national writers, and they're taking apart the owners, and it's, it's not really good press, but I want to acknowledge all of our owners who we adore, and we think, and we know that they want to play baseball, and we're looking forward to that. So happy birthday, Bob.
Well, I've always thought Bob was representative of all the folks that we know from the Giants ownership, and that is that they're in it for the right reasons. Bob loves the Giants deeply, cares about the players individually, cares about the city, the fans, the franchise. He's just done a lot of great things for the Giants. So even if you're out there watching and you don't know Bob, happy birthday to Bob, because he has impacted everybody who cares about the Giants. He
really has. He's a good man. He is.
Happy birthday, Bob.
You said that.
Yep.
Happy birthday.
Well, seems to me that's a good place to finish for the week. Mario, since he got you did want me to pass along a message, because the Giants are doing this scoreboard program to raise money for good causes, including the Giants Community Fund. So the website to go to, sfgiants.com/live scoreboard, LIVE SCOREBOARD. So sfgiants.com/live scoreboard. If you donate $50, you can designate it to the Giants Community Fund, Junior Giants at Home, or one of 3 Pride organizations during Pride Month. If you have a scoreboard message on Father's Day, a recent graduate, a happy birthday, whatever it is, Giants are doing a live scoreboard even without games and giving the proceeds to these good causes. So check it out, sfgiants.com/live scoreboard. 07.
And Dave, where are you going tomorrow?
Tomorrow, we're staying here in Wyoming for one more day. So we're gonna go up into Grand Teton National Park, see the Tetons, and then we'll be on our way after that.
And then Mount Rushmore?
We'll be in. I've never been to South Dakota. I've never been to the 2 Dakotas. Those are the only 2 states I've never been to. I'm not going to North Dakota. I'm going to check one off the list, though. I'll be up to 49. See Mount Rushmore.
All right.
Well, have a safe trip,
and
we'll see you next week.
Next week, I'll have a totally reliable internet connection, and I won't have wood paneling behind me. Be great.
Looks good.
Yeah, it's a great cabin. It's a great spot. Happy birthday, Kite. Thanks, everybody.
All right, guys.
Good
Have a good one.
Happy
Thanks to
birthday,
Coors
Smooth.
Light. Thanks to Coors Light for sponsoring, and we'll talk to you all next week. Thanks, everybody.